Welcome back, YouTubers. This is what's the science behind that. And in today's video, I thought I'd go over the whole flat earth versus round earth debate. At first I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to do it, but finally I said, why not? Okay, here's a list of reasons why the earth is actually round and not flat. Number 1, the moon. Now that humanity knows quite positively that the moon is not a piece of cheese or a playful god, the phenomena that accompany it from its monthly cycles and lunar eclipses are well documented. It was quite a mystery to the ancient Greeks, though. In their quest for knowledge, they came up with a few insightful observations that helped us figure out the shape of our planet. Yes, Aristotle. Aristotle, who made quite a lot of observations about the spherical nature of the Earth. He noticed that during a lunar eclipse, when the Earth's orbit is placed directly between the Sun and the Moon, creating a shadow in the process. The shadow on the Moon is round. This shadow is the Earth's, and it's a great clue to the spherical shape of the Earth. Since the Earth is rotating, okay, I'd advise you to see the Foucault pendulum experiment for a definite proof. Number 2. Ships in the horizon. If you've been next to a port lately, or just strolled down a beach and stared off into the horizon, you might have, perhaps, noticed a very interesting phenomenon. Approaching ships don't just appear out of the horizon, like they should if the world was flat, but rather they emerge from beneath the sea. The reason ships appear as if they emerge from the waves is because the world is not flat. It's round. Okay? Here's a very interesting fun fact. Do you remember that story about Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue in 1492 in order to prove the world was round and not flat? What if I told you that story is completely false? Yep. Surprisingly, it is. This flat earth myth made it to number 1 on the list of false historical myths as acknowledged by the Historical Society of Britain. In fact, with the exception of few fringe believers of both the church and the secular world, just about everybody in the day of Christopher Columbus knew the earth was a sphere. In fact, the Bible states in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 22, it states the earth is actually round. I'll explain more on this later. So where then did the story of Christopher Columbus and the flat earth originate from? Well, actually, believe it or not, it originated from anti-creationists and atheists, whom are trying to attribute the story to Christians and creationists in order to slander them and make them look bad. Yep, it was all created by the atheists. This is all well documented in the historian's, whose name is Jeffrey Burton Russell's book, which is titled Inventing the Flat Earth. Russell summed up his book in the scathing commentary at the American Scientific Affiliation Conference, also the ASAC, a reason for promoting both the lie about Columbus and the general lie that religion and science are in an eternal conflict in Western society is to defend Darwinism. That's right. The flat earth lie was basically like ammunition against the creationists. The argument was simple and powerful, if not elegant. This is a quote by an atheist. He quotes this. I believe it was during the conference as well. He says, "Look how stupid these creationists are. They are always getting in the way of science and progress. These people who deny evolution today are exactly the same sort of people as those idiots who've at least 1,000 years ago denied the round earth." Well, first of all, let me just start with this. There are a lot of pretty good creationists today that actually know some pretty good scientific information. A lot of them have actually helped us a lot, like drugs and antibiotic, for example, or maybe some of them has helped us out with astronomy or, etc., etc. I do want to point out that there are some evolutionists out there that are actually pretty stupid, believe it or not. So yeah, it can be vice versa. Even if it doesn't appear to be, it can be. Okay, first of all, Mr. Atheist, how stupid can you get? Come back to me once you've learned real science, and then we'll talk about it. Don't just assume someone's an idiot without actually looking at their background first. Let alone, is what do you believe about that person even true? How do you know that what we told you about that guy isn't a lie? If you've ever watched some of my videos, you'd probably know by now that I am a creationist, and you're just lucky that at least I know what science is. And I actually know some pretty good information about science in our world. A whole lot more than probably you, Mr. Atheist, believe it or not. But let's just say that's a subject for later. And we can debate about that later. Okay, so basically this story was first propagated in 1830 by two anti-church authors, Antoine Jean Letron and Washington Irving. Now, whoa, wait a minute. 1830? Yep, surprisingly. So you mean to tell me that this lie has been propagating around for nearly 180 plus years? And still, even today, the atheists and anti-creationists are taking this lie and they are concocted, they are taking that lie which they created and they are hurling it at creationists and Christians, which, by the way, has nothing to do with this lie. And they're trying to make us look bad. Not cool, man, just not cool. So right here, I believe the flat earth theory has just been debunked. Well, sort of. But actually, I want to keep on going even further into this subject. Because I believe there's a whole lot more to talk about than, well, what I just said. And number 3, a very interesting one. Varying star constellations. This observation was originally made by Aristotle, who lived 384 to 322 BC. Aristotle declared the Earth was round, judging from the different constellations one sees while moving away from the equator. After returning from a trip to Egypt, Aristotle noticed that, quoting, "There are stars seen in Egypt and Cyprus which are not seen in the northly regions," end quote. This phenomenon can only be explained if humans were viewing the stars from a round surface. Aristotle continued and claimed that the sphere of the Earth is, quoting again, "of no great size, for otherwise the effect of so slight a chance of a place would not be quickly apparent," end quote. And this is apparently from Decalio 29-A2-10. But anyways, the farther you go from the equator, the farther the known constellations go towards the horizon and is replaced by different stars. This would not have happened if the world was flat. Coming down at number 4, shadows and sticks. If you stuck a stick in the mud, it will produce a shadow. The shadow moves as time passes, which is the principle for ancient shadow clocks. If the world had been flat, then 2 sticks in different locations would produce the same shadow. Imagine the sun's rays hitting these 2 sticks some distance apart. If the Earth was flat, the resulting shadow would be the same length no matter how far apart you place them. But they don't because the Earth is round, not flat. This is because the Earth is round, like I just said. The sticks placed at different locations will throw shadows of different lengths. Okay, we have Eratosthenes, who lived 276 to 194 BC, used this exact principle to calculate the circumference of the Earth, and quite accurately too. For more information, please look up the demonstration video on YouTube titled, "The Earth's Curvature is Tasty." Just look for a picture of an orange. Coming down at number 5, this was a very far-fetched one, but I believe I can pull this one off. Number 5 is basically high distances, airplanes, and Earth's curvature. It's far-fetched, I know, but I believe I can pull it off. Standing in a flat plateau, if you look ahead of you towards the horizon, you strain your eyes, and with the help of binocular lenses you can see. Then you climb up the closest tree, the higher the better. Just be careful not to drop those binoculars and break their lenses. You then look again, strain your eyes some more, stare through the binoculars out into the horizon. The higher up you are, the farther you see. Usually, we tend to relate this to earthly obstacles, like the fact we have houses and other trees obstructing our vision on the ground. In climbing upwards, we have a clear view, but that's not the true reason. Even if you would have a completely clear plateau with no obstacles between you and the horizon, you would see much farther from greater height than you would on the ground. This phenomenon is caused by the curvature of the Earth as well. This wouldn't happen if the Earth was flat. I have seen a lot of videos on this, but just allow me to explain first before you go ahead. We're going to get into planes now. If you've ever taken a trip out of the country, specifically long destination trips, you could notice 2 interesting facts about airplanes in the Earth. Fact number 1, planes can travel somewhat in a relatively straight line a very long time and, surprisingly, will not fall off the edge of the Earth. They can also circle the Earth without stopping. Fact number 2, if you look out the window on a transatlantic flight, or any other flight, you can, most of the time, see the curvature of the Earth in the horizon. I don't know how true that is, but yeah. I'd recommend doing your own research and just come to your own conclusions on that. Okay, so, Earth's curvature. I've seen some people say that Earth doesn't have a curvature. Well, if you simply just Googled it, or even performed the experiment yourself, you would probably know Earth does indeed have a curvature. Although, even though it doesn't look like it, it does indeed have one. The Earth has a radius of approximately 3,965 miles. Using the Pythagorean theorem, that of which calculates the Earth to an average curvature of 7.98 inches per mile, or that's approximately 8 inches per mile squared. Okay, I just want to review some of the questions that some of you had about regarding the whole airplane thing. The question number 1, does an airplane need to constantly adjust nose down to follow the curvature of the Earth? The answer is yes. Allow me to explain first. A plane will fall at a constant altitude and will follow the curvature of the Earth and would not gain altitude during a level flight. For instance, if a plane is cleared to maintain 35,000 feet by regulations, the pilot must maintain that level based on a standard barometric pressure setting. That's 29.92 INHG or 103 millibars. Hence, it would stay at the same altitude, that's FL-350, because the pilot is either controlling the plane manually or has engaged the autopilot to achieve that. There are 2 basic instructions that enable this procedure. 1, the altimeter, and 2, the vertical speed indicator. That's definition for VSI. The VSI provides short-term changes in pressure and indicates whether the plane is climbing or descending. These changes will give an indication to the pilot so that he would level the plane to maintain 35,000 feet. He will then adjust the controls very slightly by use of the elevator and trims. This can be performed automatically by the autopilot as well. As such, the flight controls are constantly moving and very subtle to maintain the correct altitude. In reality, a constant altitude must be kept using the standard pressure, and that means a fixed distance to the Earth's, quoting, the center of gravity, end quote, which is maintained, making the path of the plane a curved one. So the plane isn't really flying in a straight line, geometrically speaking. Because the Earth has curved space around itself due to mass, it bends the very concept of straight line into a circle around itself. Now, ignoring the secondary changes such as, for example, the weight of the plane or the atmospheric pressure, etc., etc., it has to adjust the control to maintain a specific amount. The flat Earth is most likely will confuse themselves so much that they talk about descending millions and millions and millions of feet per minute, which, by the way, is completely false, and are just completely and utterly confused about how gravity works. So, my opinion, yes, the airplane does have to pitch down to follow the curvature of the Earth. The rate of the pitch is so slow is that it is imperceptible and absorbed completely by maintaining altitude by reference to the altimeter and vertical speed indicator. Okay, so we have at 450 kts. It takes 40 hours to fly around the whole world. The circumnavigation, which requires the airplane to pitch down at 360 degrees. Pitching at a rate of 360 degrees every 48 hours is 4 times slower than the normal speed of the movement of the hour hand on a clock. You cannot see the hour hand moving at normal speed, let alone much less when it takes 4 times slower. It equates to 1 degree to pitch down every 8 minutes. That's flying at 450 kts. The slow rate of movement cannot be seen or felt by anyone on Earth. As far as the artificial horizon, yes, it does contain a gyroscope that remains rigid, even in space, but it also contains correcting mechanisms that can correct many degrees of error each minute. So, yes, the plane does in fact have to pitch down because of the Earth is round. It may not seem like it, but it really is. In gravity, on the other hand, I've seen a lot of hearsay about gravity on this, but correct me if I'm wrong. If the Earth was flat, I'm pretty sure gravity would no longer pull anyone. Okay, here is my version of the shape of the Earth. It's called oblate spheroid. Now, even though the Earth is called oblate, this is what I consider to be round. Not flat, round. The Earth pretty much is oval shaped. This Earth is between the round Earth and the flat Earth, right in the middle. So I consider the oval Earth to be the round Earth, or at least the correct interpretation of the round Earth. This is why we see what I call the flat Earth effect. It's because of the ovalness shape of the real round Earth. Take note, oblate spheroid, obviously meaning sphere, and sphere, which we know, is another word for a circle. And we know circle is another way of saying round. And we know if the oblate spheroid Earth is round, that obviously means round Earth. You can also Google search oblate spheroid for more information if you're not totally convinced. It's a bit far-fetched idea, but I believed that I may have just pulled it off. I understand that this whole curvature thing may not be the strongest piece of evidence, but it does make sense. that pretty much ends video number 1. I'll catch you for video number 2 with more information. I hope you've learned something pretty interesting in this video. And other than that, I'll catch you up for part 2. Ciao, YouTube. Welcome back, YouTubers. This is What's the Science Behind That, and this is part 2 for our video of the Flat Earth versus Round Earth debate. And we're coming down at number 6, which is other planets. Okay. So the Earth is different from other planets. That much is true. After all, we haven't found any other planets with life yet. Not yet, anyways. However, there are certain characteristics all planets do have in common with. And it will be quite logical to assume that if all planets behave a certain way or show certain characteristics, specifically if those planets are in different places or were created under different circumstances, our planet is still the same. So, in other words, if so many planets that were created in different locations and under different circumstances show the same property, it's likely that our own planet has the same properties as well. All of our observations show planets are spherical, meaning round, not flat, round. And since we know how they're created, apparently, it's obvious why they are taking on this spheroid shape. Unless we have a very good reason to think otherwise, which I don't think, our planet is very likely the same as any other planet. Okay, so in 1610, Galileo observed the moons of Jupiter rotating around it. He described them as small planets orbiting a larger planet. A description and observation that was very difficult for the church to accept, as it challenged the geocentric model where everything was supposed to revolve around the Earth. This observation also showed that the planets known as Jupiter, Neptune, and Venus were all shown to be spherical, as in circle. And by the way, they all orbit the sun and not the Earth. Just saying. If the Earth was flat, or any other planet for that matter, the moon, the sun, comets, meteorites, Jupiter, anything else, this would be such an incredible observation that would pretty much go against everything that we know about planets, about how planet forms and how they behave. It would not only change everything we know about planet formation, but it would also affect star formation, as our sun would have to behave quite differently to accommodate the flat Earth. What we know of speed and movement in space, like planets' orbits, effects of gravity, etc., etc. And so in short, we don't just suspect that our planet Earth, is spherical. We know it is spherical, meaning round. Okay, at number 7, we had the existence of time zones. This one was actually pretty interesting, and I actually made an observation myself on this one. The time in New York, let's say, is 12 p.m. The sun in the middle of the sun is in the middle of the sky. Okay, so in Beijing, let's say it's 12 a.m., which is midnight, and the sun is nowhere to be found. In Australia, let's say it's 1:30 a.m. More than 13 hours ahead, that is. There, the sun is long gone. This can only be explained if the world is round and rotating on its axis. At a certain point, when the sun is shining on one part of the Earth, the opposite side is dark, and vice versa. This allows for different time zones and different times, specifically ones that are larger than 12 hours. Another point concerning time zones is that the sun and the Earth, well, If the sun was a spotlight, for example, very directionally located so that light only shines on a specific location, and if the world was somehow flat, we would have seen the sun even if it didn't shine on top of us. The same way you can see a light coming out of a spotlight on the stage in a theater, for example, even though you, the crowd, are in the dark. The only way to create two distinctly separate time zones where there is complete darkness in one while the other is light, in the other is dark, as if the world is round. Okay, this is an observation I made myself. It's called the sunrise and the sunsets picture. Okay, so if the Earth was flat, the sun's path would be straight, not curved. So basically, this is what the sun's path would look like. Straight line. But it's not. Since the Earth is round, the sun has a curved path. Okay? Well, technically the sun's not moving, it's just the Earth that's moving, making it appear the sun is moving, but, you know. The path the sun makes through the sky is actually a big circle. The important thing to know is that the path is curved, not straight. Just another reason why the Earth is round and not flat. Fun fact, going back to the whole gravity piece. A sphere Earth equals gravity pulls downward. Gravity on a flat Earth would pull sidewards, or sideway. Or there wouldn't be gravity at all. Now, last time I checked, apples fall downwards, not sideways. Just saying. Here at number 8. This is something I came across in the research. It's called different angles. This is another question I came across. And someone asked, if the Earth is round, then why aren't we standing at odd angles around it? Good question. The answer to that is, and the fact is, we are all standing at odd angles around the Earth. It just doesn't feel like it because of the force called gravity. Gravity was first discovered by Sir Isaac Newton. He said that every object pulls on every other object. So you are pulling on the Earth just as hard as gravity is pulling on you. However, since you weigh much less than the Earth, you do not affect its motion at all. However, again, the Earth has a big pull on you. The pull is what keeps us all from flying off into space. So every object pulls towards its center. Again, that's downward. Imagine a picture of the Earth that's, a sphere, and there's a bunch of people standing around the Earth, and there's arrows pointing towards the center of the Earth. Okay, just imagine that picture. If you look at the arrows in the picture that you're imagining, you will see that they all point to the center of the Earth. This is the direction of gravity. Now, when you look at the children that you're imagining standing around the Earth, you will see that when they are standing on the surface of the Earth, the force of gravity points away from their feet. Like I said, they point into the ground, the center of the Earth. Each children, no matter where they are standing, you can look down and it will be towards the center of the Earth. So, if you go visit someone on the opposite side of the world, the gravitational force on you will be in the opposite direction of that which your parents who are still at home. So we are all really standing at odd angles, pretty much. Okay. Here at number 9, this was probably one of the most interesting ones. I really just had to throw this one in here. And you'd guessed it. And you'd pretty much know I'd find a way to include this into the video. The Bible. That's number 9, the Bible. Maybe I'll leave a link in the box below. Um, well, that's right. The Bible actually says the earth is round, not flat, round. Short answer: while the Bible makes occasional poetic references which suggest a flat earth, these instances are clearly written at a poetic or observational point of view. However, the Bible does quite clearly show a spherical earth. Let's start with Genesis 1:9. Then God said, "Let the waters below the heavens gather the earth into one place, and let dry land appear," and it was so. This statement fits perfectly with what modern science knows about the world. Most people are familiar with a supercontinent called Pangaea. I don't know about you, but it sure looks like all the water gathered in one place, with dry land appearing together. Yet astonishing, the earth is still round. It doesn't matter which way you slice it. The Bible is pretty accurate on this one. We have Job 37:3 and 38:12-13. These two verses use a very poetic advice to describe the earth. Like skeptics, they try to trick people into thinking that this suggests the earth is flat, when it clearly does not. They assert the Bible is making a scientific claim, when it's only when it's clearly making a poetic expression. Now, expressions aren't facts. Anyone who tries to take a look at these verses literally, after reading other poetic expressions, is a complete and utter fool. The book of Job continues with poetic expressions such as the thunder of God's voice on the face of the habitable world. Spread out the skies as hard as a cast metal mirror. His voice roars. Out of the north comes a golden splendor. If anyone who even reads a few sentences, it becomes quite clear that Job is heavily using metaphors, expressions, and yes, even exaggerations. We have Esclasians 1:5. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. This statement is just an observation, not a fact. Well, actually, it is a fact that the sun does rise and set, but just like in the book of Job, it doesn't prove the earth is flat. We have 1 Samuel 2:8. He rises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap, to make them sit with nobles, and inherit a seat of honor. 4 pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he set the world on them. Again, a poetic statement. And that isn't meant to be taken literally. I will go over the 4 pillars in just a second. Daniel 4:10-11. Skeptics often use this as proof of a flat earth. But once again, what do we see here? Skeptics tricking people into believing this means the earth is literally flat. But what is it really? A dream. Daniel is describing a dream, not an actual thing. What happened in the book of Daniel is a symbolic dream, not proof that the earth is flat. The Bible even tells you the meaning of the dream. The actual tree represents the king. His power was over all of the kingdoms, not a flat earth. Joshua 10:13. So what about this one? The flat earth? Nope. Again, we see Joshua asking for the sun to stop. That doesn't mean the sun literally did stop. Educated doctors, in fact, still use this statement, like the one in Joshua 10:13. A quote by a cancer doctor that I read in a magazine just a couple of weeks ago. It read this, quoting, "Dermatologists recommended staying out of the sun when it is the highest in the sky to avoid skin cancer risks." End quote. So do these educated doctors really think the earth is flat too? No. It's only an expression. Of course, I'm referring to the one that I bunny-eared, meaning the highest in the sky. They are accurately telling us an observational truth. This is exactly what is going on in Joshua 10:13. That is what he's conveying in observation. It's not meant to be taken literally, okay? So these verses are just a poetic expression. They don't prove a flat earth. Okay, so let's get back to the four corners of the earth. This is what happens before the angels went to the four corners of the earth. 1. Major deaths of 1/4 of all humans and animals. 2. Tectonic plate movement, asteroid, meteor strike Earths, natural disasters. 3. These things would alter the landscape, size, shape, and continent. So right off the bat, we know the Earth didn't look the same back then as it does today. The continents could be in a different relative position. So the four corners actually means ground, land, world, country, region, etc., etc. This doesn't necessarily mean the entire Earth. Now, who doesn't realize at this point that the angels could absolutely be standing at 4/4 of a landmass? Sound familiar yet? That's because the description of the four corners is actually talking about Pangea, not a flat earth. So the conclusion of the biblical flat earth is, well, it's quite clear that anyone who takes the time to examine these alleged flat earth verses will quite clearly see that they are either poetic, describing an observation, or a perspective, or some other logical explanation. They don't actually prove a flat earth. Does the Bible say the earth is round? Kind of. Isaiah, like I mentioned earlier, chapter 40, verse 21 through 22. Clearly, this statement clearly calls the earth a circle. This is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. 1. First of all, he says, quoting, God sits above the circle of the earth. He is clearly calling it round, not flat, round. Hint, hint. A circle doesn't have corners. So why would a man well versed in the scripture of God call the earth a circle if he believed it was a flat cornered piece of land? Obviously, he believed the earth was circular in nature. Okay, Job 26:7 says the earth is hung on nothing. Even though Job is accused of suggesting a flat earth, it is rather shocking that he makes this statement. Proverbs 8:27 describes a circular earth. Again, we see a reference to the earth being circular in nature. Not only does it contradict the four corners claim about the flat earth, which is obviously symbolic, but it also proves the consistent thinking of a spherical earth. Luke 17:31 through 34. Jesus talks of both night and day within the same period. This is due to the earth's spherical shape and rotation, as mentioned earlier. So the conclusion on the biblical round earth, the Bible never says the earth is flat. It makes many references to it being round. Since I've already shown in my other videos why the Bible is 100% scientifically accurate, this is just another reason why the earth is round and not flat. Well, that pretty much ends video number 2 for this project. I do have some extra information here on my book, but it might be a long time before I get to the part 3 on this, just because I'm still editing on the last pieces of information. But yeah, more than likely, there might be a part 3 to this, so just keep your eyes peeled in case I publish a part 3 to this. That pretty much ends this video for number 2. I hope you've learned something interesting in this video here, specifically. And I'll catch you then. And until then, I'll see you then. Ciao, YouTube.